So we're going to spend probably the next 5 weeks, 4 to 5 weeks, talking about quadratics, okay? Because this is a huge, huge unit for us, okay? All we have is this unit, and then we're going to talk about some statistics at the end of the year, okay? But quadratics is huge for us, okay? Now, a couple things that we want to talk about is that standard form looks like ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay, but today, okay, and probably Monday, we are going to talk about vertex form. Okay, and vertex form is a times x minus h squared plus k, and hk being the vertex. Does anybody remember where else we saw something that was similar to this? We've graphed something similar to this before. Huh? What did it look like? Anybody remember what it looked like? Oh, that's pretty. Anybody remember graphing this guy? Okay, and that was called absolute value. Okay, and if you remember, it was y equals a times the absolute value of x minus h plus k. Okay, that looks pretty similar, doesn't it, to what we're going to be talking about today? Does anybody remember what this h and this k, what it did? So if it was just y equals the absolute value of x, like that, right? Your graph looked like this, right? Your vertex was at 0, 0, and it went up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, like that. Okay, we called this, anybody remember what this is called? The parent function. Okay, so our parent function for y equals the absolute value of x is just that. Okay, if I had y equals the absolute value of x minus 2 plus 4, what did this do to it? And then get your head up. What did this do? It moved it to the right 2, right? And this moved it up 4. Okay? So, when we go back to this, okay, our absolute, or our parent function of this is going to be y equals x squared. Okay, I would write that down. Okay, you've got a little bit of room on the top of your paper there. Okay, our parent function is y equals x squared. In our graph, okay, our vertex is going to be at 0, 0. Okay, once again. Okay, now, if I make a t-chart and I have my vertex at 0, 0, that's going to be the middle, right? Yes, no, yep. Okay, so two numbers smaller than 0. The next two numbers smaller than 0. -1 and -2. How about the two numbers bigger than 0? 1 and 2. Okay, so if I'm going to fill this out, -2 squared is what? 4. Positive 4, right? -2 times -2 gives us 4. Okay. -1 squared gives us 1. 1 squared gives us 1. 2 squared gives us 4. All right. So 0, 0 was my vertex, correct? Okay. Okay, we've got negative 1, 1, 1, 1, negative 2, 4, and 2, 4. Now, the difference between this guy and that absolute value is instead of making a V out of those points, it's going to be a U. Okay, so you've got to round off your bottom. Okay, if you make a V, I will mark it wrong. Okay, we're not making V's this chapter. We're making U's. Not sure why some of you aren't writing this stuff down. All right, the big stuff that we're going to talk about today is vertex, okay, and then graphing these guys. Okay, so remember, if my vertex is h, k, right? If this is a x minus h, what's my h? Ooh, what's my 2? Or what's my h? Not negative 2, just 2. Because it's supposed to be x minus h, right? Is it x minus what? 2. So it's 2 comma, what's my k? 3. So my vertex is 2, 3. Okay, now that goes in the middle of your table. 2, 3. Okay, we're on page 36, Sam. Okay, the two numbers that are smaller than 2. 1, 0, the two numbers bigger than 2. 3 and 4. Okay, we now have to plug those in to figure out what our numbers are. Okay, so I'm taking, what am I putting in for x? 0. So 0 minus 2 gives me negative 2, because I'm putting it in for x right here, right? Right? Okay, so negative 2 squared gives me 4, plus 3 gives me 7. So I'm going 7 right here. Okay, what's my next number that I'm putting in? 1. So I'm putting it in right here for x. Does everybody see where we're getting these numbers? Okay, so 1 minus 2 gives me negative 1. Negative 1 squared is 1. Plus 3 gives me 4. You see where we're getting these numbers? Okay. Okay. All right, so what am I putting in next? 3. So 3 minus 2 gives me 1. 1 squared is 1. Plus 3 gives me 4. Okay, and then what am I plugging in? 4. So 4 minus 2 gives me 2. 2 squared is 4 plus 3 is 7. Okay. Do I have symmetry? It's called symmetry if they're same on both sides of the vertex. Do I have symmetry? Yes. Is that a good thing? Definitely. Okay, because we want it to be both the same on both sides of the vertex. If it's not, we did something wrong. Okay, so when I go to graph this, graph your vertex, 2, 3, so over 2, up 3. Okay, and then we've got 1, 4, 0, 7, 3, 4, and 4, 7. And what shape am I making? A U. So through those points, I need a U. Okay, so far so good? All right, so let's look at the next one. Interesting. All right. So, anybody remember what happens when there's a number out front here? It just makes it stretchier. We don't even have to distribute anything. We're just got to know that that's going to make my graph stretchier. Okay? Almost thinner. It gets like tall and skinny the bigger that number gets. Okay? So, vertex. Remember, we've got x minus h plus k, right? So, my vertex, x minus what? Oh, really? Because that's a plus now. So it's going to be x minus negative 3, because that's the only way that we can get it to be a plus, is it's x minus a negative 3, because that's what's going to turn it into a plus. And my k is negative 1. Okay, so vertex, negative 3, negative 1. Negative 3, negative 1. Okay, now we've got to pick our two numbers that are bigger and two numbers that are smaller. Two numbers smaller are negative 2. There we go, negative 4 and negative 5. Two numbers bigger, negative 2 and negative 1. Okay, so now when I'm plugging this in, okay, remember we've got to square it first. So I'm going negative 5 plus 3 gives me negative 2. Negative 2 squared gives me 4 times 2 gives me, so 8 minus 1 gives me 7. Holy smokes, there's a lot going on now. Okay, so now my negative 4. So negative 4 plus 3 gives me, okay, negative 1 squared, 1, times 2, 2, minus 1, 1. Okay, if I did this right, what is this number going to be? 1, and what is this number going to be? 7. You still have to do it to make sure that's what you get. Okay, because if I go 2 times, now what am I plugging in? Negative 2, so negative 2 plus 3 gives me 1. 1 squared gives me 1 times 2, 2 minus 1 gives me 1. Okay, and then negative 1. So we've got 2 times negative 1 plus 3. What's negative 1 plus 3? 2. 2 squared? 4 times 2? And minus 1. 7. Questions about where those numbers come from? Pause it. Okay, so now we graph them. We've got negative 3, negative 1, so negative 5, 7, negative 4, 1, negative 2, 1, negative 1, 7. And notice how my graph is a little bit taller and a little bit skinnier than the last one that we did. Right? Okay, if I'm going to do this guy, okay, anybody remembers what happens if there's a minus sign out front? What's going to happen to my graph? That's if I'm going to have a fraction out front. Yeah, it's going to flip, and it's going to look like that guy where it's upside down. Okay, so vertex, okay, so remember x minus h plus k. So vertex, x minus 2. So vertex is 2 comma plus k is 1. All right, so vertex is 2, 1. Okay, two numbers smaller than 2. 1 and 0. Two numbers bigger. 3 and 4. Yes. Yeah, you want the smaller on top because you want them to go in order from smallest to biggest. That's all right. That's a tough one. All right. So now we're plugging in. What number am I plugging in? 0. So 0 minus 2. 0 minus 2. Negative 2. Negative 2 squared. 4. Okay, but now I got to bring down that negative, so it becomes a negative 4 plus 1 gives us negative 3. Okay, if I plug in a 1, 1 minus 2 gives me negative 1 squared gives me 1. Now I got to bring that negative down, so it becomes negative 1 plus 1. So I get 0. Okay, so what's this number going to be? 0, and what's this number going to be? Yes. Okay, so if I graph it, I already graphed my 2, 1. So 1, 0, 3, 0, 0, negative 3, and 4, negative 3. What happened to my graph? Flipped it upside down. Okay, not so bad, right? How are we feeling so far? Okay, let's flip to page 40. Okay, it's the exact same thing. Okay, remember that you've got x minus h plus k. So my vertex, x minus, well, right, so it's plus 3. So how do I get to a plus 3? X minus negative 3. It's in here, it's going to be the opposite of what that is. If it's a plus, it's going to be a negative. Okay, out here, plus k gives me negative 2. Okay, so negative 3, negative 2 is going right there. Right? Okay, I want you to fill out the rest. What are my two smaller numbers? Negative 4 and negative 5. What are my two bigger? Negative 2 and negative 1.